Have you ever just stood on a city street, looked up at one of those massive skyscrapers and just thought, how? I mean, how does something that enormous, that unbelievably heavy, just stay there? We can all see the steel and the glass, right? But the real science, the stuff that holds our whole world up, is completely hidden from view.
So, let me ask you, what do you think is the most important part? Is it the steel frame? The central core that holds the elevators? Maybe it's that super strong, high-tech glass? Well, you might be surprised to find out that it's none of those things.
Nope. The most crucial part of any giant structure, the real MVP, is the part that's buried deep underground. It's the part you will never, ever get to see. And down there, it's a world of insane pressures, complex materials, and totally invisible forces.
To really get our heads around how this all works, I want you to think of it as 3 invisible battles that engineers have to win every single time. First, they have to conquer the ground itself. Second, they have to figure out how to defy gravity. And third, they have to perfect the very material they're building with.
Okay, so let's dive into that first battle, the ground. We usually think of the Earth under our feet as, solid, stable, just dirt. But for an engineer, oh no, the ground is anything but simple. It's this complex, unpredictable character in our story that can either be your greatest ally or your absolute worst enemy.
And that's why everything, and I mean everything, starts with understanding what you're dealing with. One source put it perfectly. You simply cannot design a foundation without a thorough understanding of the subsoil. Is it sand? Is it clay? How's it going to react when it gets wet? These aren't just minor details. They are literally life or death questions.
One of the first things they have to figure out is something called permeability. The easiest way to think about it is like a sponge. If you have sandy soil, water can squeeze through it really easily. So if you put a heavy load on it, it settles pretty much right away. But a dense clay, that's a whole different ballgame.
And that leads us right to compressibility. Clay is made of these teeny tiny particles, and when you plop a skyscraper down on top of it, the water trapped between those particles gets squeezed out super slowly. And what that means is the building might actually continue to settle for years after it's been built. Just think about that for a second. Engineers have to predict how the ground is going to shift long after the construction crews have gone home. If you get that wrong, well, it's a disaster.
So to handle all this complexity, engineers have basically created personalities for different types of soil. You've got your well-graded gravels. Those are the rock stars, just fantastic foundation material. But then you have things like silt or lean clay, which are way more finicky. You'd never use the same strategy on a loose sandy soil that you would on a dense, slow-moving clay. You have to know the soil's personality, because it dictates your entire game plan.
Okay, so you've done your homework, you understand the ground, battle 1 is won. But now comes battle 2. How in the world do you transfer the colossal weight of your building? We're talking hundreds of thousands of tons safely into that ground. This is the fight against gravity, and the unsung heroes of this fight are the foundations.
Foundations are the critical link. They're like translators, speaking the language of the building and the language of the earth. Their whole job is to take that incredibly concentrated, crushing force coming down a single column and just spread it out so the soil can actually handle it without giving way.
And engineers basically have 2 main plays in their book. If the soil near the surface is strong enough, they use what are called shallow foundations. But if the soil on top is weak, think soft mud or loose sand, they've got to go deep. The analogies here are just perfect. A shallow foundation is like wearing a snowshoe to walk on soft snow. It spreads your weight out. A deep foundation, that's like putting on a pair of stilts to reach the solid ground way down below.
And here's that snowshoe concept in action. This is a shallow footing. You see how the narrow column comes down and then sits on that wide concrete pad? That pad takes all that intense pressure and spreads it out over a much bigger area. It reduces the force to a level the soil can safely handle. It's simple, it's elegant, and it works great, if the soil is good enough.
But what if it's not? Well, then you bring out the stilts. These are called piles. They're basically long, skinny columns made of concrete or steel. And they get driven down sometimes hundreds of feet, right through all that weak, useless soil on top. They don't care about the surface at all. Their job is to transfer the building's entire weight down to a layer of strong soil or solid bedrock far below.
All right, so we've conquered the ground and we've defied gravity. But there's one last battle we have to win, perfecting the material itself.
because those foundations we've been looking at are made of concrete. And while concrete is an absolute miracle material, it has one critical, you could even say catastrophic, weakness.
This one idea right here is the key to pretty much all of modern construction. It's the concrete is incredibly strong in compression. That's when you squeeze it, but it's shockingly weak in tension. That's when you try to pull it apart.
To put it as simply as possible, you can stack millions and millions of pounds on a concrete block, and it's perfectly happy. But if you take a concrete beam and just try to bend it, the bottom edge gets stretched, pulled into tension, and it will crack and fail almost instantly.
So here's exactly how that happens. You push down on a plain old concrete beam. The top of it gets compressed, which is totally fine, but the bottom edge has to stretch. And since concrete has basically zero strength when you stretch it, a tiny crack forms. And that crack shoots upward through the beam in a split second and boom, the whole thing just breaks. It's called brittle failure, and it is an engineer's absolute worst nightmare.
So what's the solution? It's brilliant. It's a partnership. Engineers embed steel bars, what we call rebar, right inside the concrete. And steel is the total opposite of concrete. It is incredibly strong when you pull on it, in tension. So you get this perfect team up. The concrete does what it's great at, resisting all that squeezing force, and the steel does what it's great at, resisting all that pulling force. And together they create reinforced concrete, the powerhouse material that literally built the modern world.
And you can see just what that material is up against in a diagram like this one of a retaining wall. Now, those arrows, they're not just for decoration, they represent the real, physical, totally invisible force of the Earth constantly trying to push that wall over. The reinforced concrete has to be designed perfectly to fight back against that pressure, day in and day out, for decades.
So when you put all three of these battles together, you start to realize that engineering isn't just about pouring concrete and bolting steel together.
It's really about a conversation. A silent, intricate dialogue between the building, its foundation, and the Earth itself. The engineer's job is to basically act as a translator, to understand the language of all three and make sure they all get along.
At the end of the day, it's about winning those three unseen battles, figuring out the fickle personality of the soil, picking the right strategy to beat gravity, and creating that perfect partnership between concrete and steel.
So the next time you're looking at a skyline, just remember this. The real marvel isn't just how high those buildings reach. It's the depth of understanding of geology, of physics, of material science that holds them there. That knowledge, that is the true foundation.
Our entire world is built on this silent dialogue. But as we start to build in even crazier places, on softer ground, in earthquake zones, maybe even on other planets, what new soil personalities are we going to discover? What new material partnerships will we have to invent? What will that silent conversation between our buildings and the ground sound like 100 years from now?